Hello, this is Sondra Baras, and I'd like to bring you an update about what is happening in Israel today. We are now more than a month into this horrific war that was forced upon us by the vile Hamas terrorists who, on October 7th, on a holiday, on a Sabbath, invaded Israel. Thousands of terrorists, well armed, well equipped, well prepared, came into southern Israel, took over whole communities, and slaughtered more than 1,400 people. Today we have close to 250 Israelis, men, women, children, babies, elderly, that are being held hostage by the Hamas in Gaza. It has been just over 30 days since this terrible thing happened. And we know from Jewish tradition that 30 days usually marks the conclusion of an initial mourning period. And I'll read to you from the very end of the book of Deuteronomy when we talk about the death of Moses. And the Israelites bewailed Moses on the plains of Moab for 30 days. The period of wailing and mourning for Moses came to an end. We know from here that going back to the time of Moses, the nation of Israel mourned him for 30 days. And to this day, 30 days is a marker. If you lose a loved one, a child, a brother, a sister, a spouse, you mourn for 30 days. And after that, you begin a process of going back to your routine, to your regular life. The one exception is if you lose a parent, and then the 30-day marks a certain break in the mourning, but you continue a mourning for a year. What happened this week, following this tradition, there were memorial services all over the country, marking 30 days since the terrible massacre on October 7th. And there were, keep in mind, who are the people that are mourning today? These are people that are in hotels, that their communities have been destroyed. In most cases, in many cases, the people don't even have homes to go back to because their homes have been burned to the ground. In some cases, the terrorists did not succeed in coming into the communities, but the fighting remained just outside the community or at the entrance of the community. But all these people have since been evacuated to hotels in Eilat, in the Dead Sea, in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, wherever there is an empty room. And in fact, today we're not seeing any tourists in Israel. So all the hotels in Israel are full of people who have been evacuated either from the south or from the north, because also in the north, with Hezbollah shooting artillery fire and missiles over into northern Israel, already for several weeks. Also, all the towns and communities at the northern border have been evacuated. And so what happened this week is that in all of these hotels, groups of people got together by their communities, the community of Kfar Aza, the community of Netiv Asara, all community held memorial services to commemorate the death of their loved ones. And these were not just, you sit by, you stand, and you say a few words about your loved one, which is what normally happens when somebody dies at an old age or under normal circumstances. But here you see children whose parents were murdered in front of their eyes, and they are miraculously saved. And they're being held by a neighbor, or they're being held by a grandparent. Or you see grandparents whose children or grandchildren were murdered. You see people whose best friends and neighbors were murdered, and they're standing there crying and mourning, and it's not at all like the death of Moses. In the death of Moses, the 30-day period elapsed, and the children of Israel went on about their daily lives. But in this case, the 30-day marker is just a marker. The wound is still so open and so fresh, and people are mourning and they can't go back to routine because they have no homes, because they're sitting in hotels. And believe me, when you're sitting in a hotel as a refugee, you are not enjoying the pool and the lovely breakfast. You have your family, you and your wife and your children, and you're squished into one room, and you don't even have your things. And you don't know where you're going next, and you don't have your job because your community and your livelihood has been destroyed, and these people are in such terrible situation of mourning. Now, let's go back again to the Bible. When Jacob was told by his sons that his son Joseph was killed by an animal, he mourned. But you have this sense, and it takes you through the whole story, that he continued to mourn. He never pulled out of the mourning of his son. And the sorrow that Jacob feels because Joseph, what he thinks Joseph was killed, never leaves him until, of course, he's reunited with Joseph. And we learn from this that when someone is actually killed, there is closure. It takes time, you will be sad, but there is closure. In the case of the close to 250 people who have been kidnapped, where we have absolutely no knowledge over what happened to them, there is no closure. There is constant mourning and constant grieving and constant worry, hoping against hope that they are still alive, that they are healthy, not knowing what is going on there. And let us remember that we're hearing voices now, both from the United States and from who is really a wonderful, fabulous ally and has helped us so much during this crisis. But at the same time, more and more pressure is coming both from the American government and from countries all over the world that Israel has to worry about the humanitarian needs of the poor people in Gaza. And we, the people of Israel, are saying to the international community, but what about the poor hostages that were kidnapped, that are being kept down in tunnels somewhere under the city of Gaza, or wherever they're being kept there in Gaza? Where's the Red Cross? How come the Red Cross is not? The Red Cross, who is supposed to look after the health and humanitarian needs of people all over the world, where is the International Red Cross? Why haven't they even put in a minor request, let alone insist that the Hamas allow them to visit these hostages and check on how they are? Are they alive? Do they need medical treatment? And provide them with medical treatment. There's a woman we just learned about today. Her name is Judith Weiss, and she is an oncology patient. She is in the process of having treatment for cancer, and she is one of the hostages. Now, nobody's giving her medicine. She could die any day. And let's talk about the babies and the children. What is going on there? And what we are seeing is that even amongst the countries and the leaders who are showing great sympathy for what has happened to Israel, we are not seeing enough pressure. We are not seeing enough activity, real activity, being put, pressure on Qatar, pressure on Egypt, pressure on other countries who may well be able to do something with regard to the hostages. And when we look at this entire situation, the conclusion that we have all reached is that we are on our own. And that doesn't mean we're on our own because nobody cares. There are some people who care. But what we are seeing is that there are too many people, not only who don't care, but too many people who are siding with Hamas. Or they may express some kind of sympathy with the plight of the Israeli hostages or the families who have lost loved ones. But in the same sentence, they will say, but we are also so sympathetic to the plight of the poor people of Gaza. The poor people of Gaza voted in Hamas. The poor people of Gaza support Hamas. The poor people of Gaza can leave Gaza if they move down. I know Hamas is trying to stop it, but there is a skewed balance here. The attention of the international community must be for the people of Israel who have been kidnapped and who are being held hostages. But if I take this message, a message that has become very powerful in Israel, we are on our own. Israeli army has to go in and do whatever it can, not just to defeat Hamas, but to rescue these hostages and bring them home. And we here, the people of Israel, have to look out for ourselves. We are relying on God, and we are relying on the IDF. But here in Judea and Samaria, we are facing an enormous threat, because the Hamas is not over there in Gaza. Hamas is here in Judea and Samaria. Since October 7th, the IDF has arrested almost 2,000 terrorists. 2,000 terrorists, most of whom are from Hamas. These are people who are planning or trying to kill Jews. We have Hamas terrorists living right next to us, and any minute they could come in and attack. And we are learning our lessons from what happened on October 7th. We dare not rely on anyone. We have to make sure that we are prepared, that we have the equipment, that we have the cameras, that we have the vests. Even today, we are getting calls from communities all over Judea and Samaria. Communities like Avigail and Mitzpeh Yair have called us, both in the Hebron Hills. Their entire rapid response team has been, in both cases, has been drafted, an emergency draft, into the IDF reserves. Now they have to take people in the community who are not even trained, women, maybe people who are a little bit older, who are not top flight combat soldiers, and giving them equipment so that they at least can be on the alert. So we've got to make sure they have the equipment, they have the cameras, they have the communications equipment. We know that in the community of Rechelim, on Friday night, terrorists from the neighboring village shot into the living rooms of 3 families. By a miracle, they were not hurt. We have to make sure they have a better way to see that in advance, to prevent the terrorists from getting close enough to shoot into their homes. The community of Shim'ah, there was both attempted infiltrations in that community, plus they saw and they caught actually potential terrorists outside the community taking pictures, taking notes. They are planning an attack of the October 7th variety. That's what happened on October 7th. In advance, Arabs who were working in Israel from Gaza took notes, took pictures, went back to Hamas, and that enabled them to plan this attack. And the people who live right near us, the terrorists who live right around us, could be planning these attacks right now. We have stopped all Palestinian Arabs from coming into our communities and working. We have no choice. Some of these people might be lovely people who really mean us no harm, but how do we know who to trust? And so we have to be extremely careful. And I turn to you now. We are on our own. We are doing our best. But thanks to our Christian friends, we do have help. You have been amazingly supportive and have enabled us already to purchase vital emergency equipment to help communities. But the needs continue. I just gave you a few examples. We have to continue making sure that these communities can literally stand on their own until the IDF can get there in the time of an attack. Don't give up hope. This too will end. The IDF will emerge victorious. Please God, the hostages will return home safely. We must pray, we must hope and pray that God will be with us, with the people of Israel, with the IDF as we move forward on this. Stand with us. We need you. Thank you.